Hello everyone, welcome back to Kalico-K and the 8th in a series of 9 slow stitches, little mini stitches to celebrate Easter. So we're going to start again with a 3.5 inch felt square as we do for all of them. I've got a lovely jar full of purple buttons here, so they will definitely feature. We love a button. I've also found a couple of different types of lace. I've not really decided which one yet. Quite like that one because it's got sort of leaves and it's a little bit tactile, but I really like broderie anglais type lace, so we'll see. One of those will feature. And I've also got a couple of different ribbons. One is a very pale green organza, but I really liked it underneath this tiny little spaghetti ribbon. So I'm going to have a look at see where we can use that. I love that fabric. So Bunnies it is, and we'll feature a bunny somewhere in here. And then this fabric here we've used several times before. It's a lovely group of colours. Previously we've used these sections, but I'm going to concentrate more on using this little flower today because I'm going to try and keep the palette to a very simple tone. The last stitch we did, number 7, was bonkers, and we threw the kitchen sink at that one. We did weaving and flowers and all sorts of things. This one is going to be a lot more gentle, and we're going to keep the palette a lot more muted. So I've preloaded my needles with white and a couple of shades of lavender, and then a really lovely kind of sea green colour here as well. So I've popped them in my lovely leather needle holder. I will just say one thing about this. This is great because these needles can't go any further. If you are using a conventional pin cushion and you're going to put your needles in it, don't be tempted to push those needles down in because they will just disappear. So pins straight in, needles flat, okay? Just to keep it nice and safe, and then you can't possibly stab yourself from underneath then. But I've got this gorgeous pin cushion here that I use to put all my preloaded needles in. So we're going to start off with our square of felt, and we're going to see how we can turn this into a bunny related square. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to go for this particular lace. I like it. I love the patterns in it, and I like the texture. I'm a big fan of fabrics with texture, but I don't really want it slap bang in the middle, so I'm going to start off by popping that just in that corner. And then what I've also done is I've cut out one of those little purple flowers, and I've just gently frayed off the edges, and I'm going to use that in that top corner there just to balance it. So with the lace, I and ahed about how to put it on, and I think what I'm going to do is blanket stitch it on using white, so it adds a little bit more of that texture, but it doesn't shout, it's not in your face. So put that to one side for a minute. So using some white embroidery thread, most embroidery threads come in strands of 6. I split mine to 3, so it's a much more workable size. And then I'm just doing a lock stitch at the back. Now blanket stitch is one of those stitches, I've said this before, I know, I get asked so often how to start it. So let's start in the middle over here so we haven't got a corner to cope with. So you come up on the outside of your fabric. I'll do it this way round. You go down into your fabric, and then you come back out where you went in to begin with. So you've just made a straight stitch. Now what I do then is I make like a little knot, and then the next stitch you're going to look at that distance and make it that distance away. So I'm going to come into my fabric, out on the edge, making sure that my thread is behind the needle, and there's your first stitch. This is a really good edging stitch, blanket stitch. It's lovely to go around the edges of things where you haven't necessarily turned them over. None of the fabrics in these stitches have got hems. None of them have been turned over, so they're all being used as raw edge fabrics. And I quite like that because you do get just a softness to them. And slow stitching, it is a slow process. It isn't about being very precise, neat, tidy. It's not like dressmaking. It is a mindful stitch. It's something that you can take your time over. I mean, obviously I'm stitching these a lot quicker than I would if I was stitching them on my own. I'm going to just pop a pin in this because it just keeps travelling. That's the only trouble with lace. Because it's textured, it does tend to travel across your fabric. Now when you get to a corner, instead of going over to the edge, you come back into the previous stitch, diagonally come out on the corner and make a little diagonal stitch, and then you do the same thing as you turn the corner. So you go back into the same stitch, out, down on that side of your fabric, and you've made a corner and you've turned, and then you carry on going just the same as you were before. You just have to make sure that that thread goes nicely behind. I'm trying to do this as slowly as I can so you can see. All of our embroidery stitches, or at least most of them at the moment, are in the embroidery tutorials playlist. There are a couple from these stitches that aren't there yet, and I tend to wait until I've got a group of 3 or 4 and then I pop them in a video tutorial, and they're done on a hoop. So they're all done on a calico, just plain calico on a hoop with a dark colour so that you can see them easier. So I'm going to carry on and put this on, and then we'll come back and do the next step. So here we are. I've just stitched on that bottom corner lace and gone all the way around the edge with blanket stitch. And what I'm now going to do is use this little square that I've frayed out. I've picked out one of those purple flowers, and I'm just going to pop that in the top corner there so that it balances the stitch out a little. And then I've also cut out just one of those single flowers, and I'm going to use it this is where you have ideas, but obviously I don't do these until I actually stitch them with you, because I like to live dangerously. so yeah, I think I'm going to use them there. And then I was thinking of stitching them in the centre, but actually I picked out some of those buttons, and I found a lovely green one as well, which is exactly the same colour. But I think I'm going to use, am I going to use a little button or a big button? I think maybe bigger buttons. Yeah, let's use those two. Not sure where the green one's going to go yet, but let's put these fabrics on like that. And we can secure that corner with another little button. I know what I'm going to do around there. I'm going to do something around there in a minute. So let's put these buttons on, and I think we'll use the mauve because, no we won't, we'll use the green. I do this all the time. So we'll put this one on first because we know exactly where that one's going to go. So let's just do a lock stitch at the back. and I've so enjoyed doing these. I don't pre-design exactly what I'm doing. I kind of have an idea, and I don't know what stitches I'm using until I actually sit down and actually stitch them while I'm recording them. So it is a process of design whilst I'm stitching, which I love. And if you were slow stitching when you're taking your time and doing this, that is kind of what you'll do. You won't, you know, generally, I mean, well, I do. I'll have an idea of what I want to do, but I won't have a definite plan, if you like. I might have a colour, I might have some fabric that I think, yeah, I'd quite like to use that fabric. I'm going to put that so that that stalk sits in between those. It just links it together. This is a lovely little button. It's got a very cute centre. And with all buttons that have 4 holes, you have a choice. You can either do 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can do cross. I'm going to go across with this one. I'm just going to move that button up a bit so that I have a little diagonal stitch. These buttons are not going to have any kind of stress on them, so you don't need to do loads of stitching. I'm just going to go around them twice and leave it at that. So they're now secure. They're on there, they won't fall off. And I'm just going to do a sliding stitch here, because while I've got this green thread on, I'm going to pop this button on in the corner, and then we've got that corner secured. So and I will use the green again. One thing you need to think about when you're doing those long connecting stitches that I've just done, so I've just come up all the way up from one end to the other, is just to make sure that that tension doesn't get pulled tight. What you don't want is for your base fabric to be all rucked up and puckered up, so you just be a little bit careful. And what I've done as well is I use the felt or a bit of fabric where you can't see, and I just do a half a stitch, so it's not a big long stitch that can get caught. So I'm just going to do another little cross on this button. I do love buttons. I love using buttons in stitching because I like the fact that they give a little bit of 3D, bit of texture. So there we go, and it's a nice little 3, and those of you who know me well will know I like 3s. So I'll just lock it off at the back here, and that's those buttons on. So far we've got a nice little balance of image. So now I'm going to use this lace, this ribbon, but I think, I don't know, that one on its own. Oh, actually I quite like that. A little bit of shimmer and sparkle. And to make it extra special, let's, I know what will make it even nicer. I'm going to put a bow in this. So if you're going to just put a bow in, if you make 2 loops, let's just give it a bit more length, make 2 loops and literally tie a knot in them. You can then adjust that to the size you want, give it a little tug, and you've made a bow. And then what I'm going to do I want it in the middle? No, I'm going to put it up there. I'm going to stitch that onto there. I'm just going to use a stem stitch. Yes, let's use a stem stitch. I haven't done a stem stitch for a couple of them. Now the question is, do I do that with purple or do I do it with green? Do I want it to show? Yeah, I'm going to do it with purple. So it's there. You can see the texture. Taking my influence from this lace, I think, because I like the fact that it's white on white. So to do a stem stitch, I've come back up at the bottom there. I'm going to come back in, come back over here, and do quite a long stitch, but I'm going to come out halfway between, oh, this is going through lots of layers and it's quite a thick needle, between where I came out and where I've gone back in again. My next stitch is going to go that distance away, so that half distance in. There's so many things for this to get caught up in now. And then keeping that loop there on that side, I'm going to come back out where I finished my last stitch. Now, as I said earlier, all of these stitches you'll find in the embroidery tutorial playlist, so just look for the set that's got stem stitch in it and you'll find it there. And I'm just going to stem stitch all the way up this ribbon to the top. So I've stem stitched all the way up here, and I've secured this with just a couple of little stitches in the centre, just to make sure that that little bow doesn't come undone. But then I thought, I found this little green button, so I'm going to stitch that little green button in the middle of the bow, and I'm going to use the purple thread that I've used for the stem stitching and just finish that bow off with a little button in the middle, and then it just tidies the whole thing up. And there we go. So I'll lock that off, and we're done with that. So that balances out quite cute. I like that. Now our little bunny. While I was doing that, I was having a little think about how I wanted to stitch this bunny on, and I think I'm going to do a French knot for his nose, a French knot for his eye, and a French knot for his tail. I might French knot that little line of green up there, and then I'm just going to do some little cross stitches in the flowers. I'm not going to do loads, just enough to attach, but I think that might look quite cute. So I'm going to pop a pin in him, and I'm just going to start working those little cross stitches. Which is the best colour? Match that one. So we'll stick to the same lavender colour that we did the stem stitching with, I think. And so I'm just going to lock that in on the back here, again with a double stitch. See this so often. And then I'm just going to pick points and just stitch a little cross. So using those flowers as a key. So there's one. So they're just little tiny cross stitches. I'll put one in his little foot. Little lucky paw. I've got such a soft spot for rabbits. I had guinea pigs when I was very little, and then I moved up to rabbits when I got to a teenager. Still loved guinea pigs, and I used to breed them for a while. Oops. And then when I went into adulthood, quite a long time into adulthood, I started fostering them. and so I had lots of cruelty cases come through my life for a while. Take that pin out now. Can you see there's little crosses coming in? So rabbits have always played quite a big part, and I don't have any now, but they are gorgeous. And there was a particularly lovely one I had called Daisy May, and she was a real sad case, and she was bald when I brought her home. And I had a little Abyssinian guinea pig at the time called Dumpling, and they became such best pals. But Dumpling had very long hair, and Daisy May used to like to wash her, so she'd pin her down by her hair, and you'd just hear all this mad squeaking, and Dumpling liked it really, but she wasn't going to admit that. She'd actively go and sit between her front paws and wait for her to wash her, but then when she did start washing it, she'd squeak. So they were fun. And now I don't have them anymore. I just have a mad dog and a gecko, and my daughter has a budgie, which sometimes you'll hear in the background if he's particularly loud. You'll definitely hear Luna in the background, although for the first time in a long time today she's decided to go to sleep, which is amazing. So there we go. So I'm just cross stitching where I feel like it, and it doesn't then obliterate the pattern on the fabric. It just attaches and gives a little bit of extra texture. There you go. So I'm going to carry on, just do a few more here, and then we'll do the key points, nose, ears, eyes and tail. So I've got some black thread here that I'm going to put the eye in with. So if you want tiny details, French knots are such good little stitches to do. I use them quite often in things like this. So you're coming up, and then you're going to wrap that thread 1, 2, 3, 4, slide your needle back down to your fabric, slide the twists down the needle, and then go back in. Ooh, there's a lot to go through on this one, where you came out. And there's his little eye. So let's do his little nose. So a quick lock stitch on the back, and then you come up on the edge of the nose, and then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Slide your needle back down level with your fabric, slide that point of the needle back to where you almost came out, push it back through, and there's his little nose. And then I'm not going to do every single one on his ear, but I'm just going to do a couple. 1, 2, 3, 4, slide it down, slide the point back in, and there you make a knot. And then I'm going to, it looks like he's got earrings. That wasn't quite the plan, but hey. And then I'm just going to do that one at the top there. 1, 2, 3, 4, slide it down, slide it back, and down you go. So there's his ear secured, and then I'm just going to do a long stitch across the back here down to that corner, and then I'm just going to do one right in the center of his tail, or her tail, calling him a he, but it might not be. 1, 2, 3, 4, and slide it back in, and there's the little tail finished. So I'm not going to do very much more, I think, with this. There is a very simple, very gentle and simple colour palette just really two colours and white. Our little Easter bunny. Thank you for coming and watching. If you've stitched along with us, then that's fantastic. And join us for number 9. Take care, you. Bye.